Hello, today I'm going to discuss how to use two excellent pieces of software together, the desktop Google Earth application and the mobile phone app Maps.me. It's often the case that ecologists survey sites before other surveyors and before all the important geographical details of the site have been mapped. They often bear the brunt of working with maps that lack many important details, and in many consultancies they do not have access to the sophisticated geographical information system software that's used to create custom maps, or to the timely help of professionals who do use them. Fortunately, most ecologists have access to Google Earth because it's free. There are many mobile phone apps that allow them to map and share information, which could be important for staying safe on site and for carrying out their surveys successfully. Google Earth is an easy to use but very powerful desktop environment for visualizing landscape. It lacks database capabilities, but in some ways it's superior to more complicated geographical information systems or GIS software. Useful features include this slider, which allows you to see satellite photographs taken at different times in history. This could be very useful if you had a mountainous site and your most recent satellite photograph showing it covered in snow. You might want to slide it until it's summer and see what it looks like in summer. It's easy to see the terrain then. Or you might want to use it to investigate whether a pond dries out over the summer, for instance, which might be relevant to whether it's suitable habitat for newts. So this is very helpful. This is a superbly useful tool, the Street View tool. If you drag this little man icon onto the landscape, you'll see all of these roads illuminate in blue. That shows that they've been mapped out by a vehicle that drives around these roads. And you can just plonk the little man onto the terrain, and you can use this to have a look around and, for instance, see if a potential lay-by looks like it's a suitable place for you to park when you're doing your surveys. So that's superbly useful. Other things you can do, you can overlay images. I'm going to briefly show you an image that I overlaid because it's a slightly unusual one. This is a semi-transparent grid. It's entirely opaque in some places and entirely transparent in others. I'm not aware of any ways that geographical information system software like ARC and Q can do this, and furthermore this is very easy to move and rotate. I'll just show you. You have these features that allow you to rescale. You can preserve the aspect ratio if you hold shift down while you do this. You only need to move one of them, but you'll change the other feature as well. If you take off shift, then you can just scale it in one dimension or another. And to cancel that, because this is actually a calibrated grid, I explain in another video what I use this for. It's all about planning bird surveys, getting within 100 meters of everywhere on a site. I use this as a template to draw my survey lines. So overlaid images could include things like contour maps. They might be early information from a client showing land ownership boundaries. Potentially that shows you what area of land you want to survey. So you would then go in and you would draw a survey area over the top of your map and export this to your map. Potentially you might want to add a route within your survey area, getting in the most important habitat or what have you. So I like the way that the folder structure works here. So you have folders that are kept within folders, which means that if you take the base folder and you make it all invisible or visible at once with one click, You can then selectively switch off components within there. So you can also make it visible or invisible in terms of whether you can see it within this menu as well, which if you have a large number of files stacked in here can be particularly helpful. So this is an example of a load of buoys which I mapped so that I could use these as reference markers when discussing cetaceans, whales and dolphins and things. In the sound, this is a series of buoys that have different colours. The fourth marine mammals group supplied a map that I was able to overlay and then just trace out the locations of all of these buoys. So that was pretty handy. So you can switch them all off together. Then switch on all the green buoys, all the red buoys. These are place marks. You can use all kinds of different symbology with these. I'll just show you one. If you wanted to change the symbology to something else, volcano, whatever, I'm going to cancel that because I don't actually want to do anything to that. You can look at elevation profiles of a route. Just going to save that, and then I'm going to right click, show elevation profile. So this will show you where the steepest areas are of your route. So gather that where this red marker is one of the steeper sections of the route. Might want to then change the location of some of these vertices. Perhaps add another one. See that this changes as I go. Perhaps I want to take a more gentle route up the slope. This would be easier to do if you had an overlaid contour map. But as I say, I've dealt with that on a different video. So nested folders make it easier to manage your files. You can overlay images, you can draw walking routes, you can use street view, you can use satellites, satellite maps of different ages, all excellent. There is a very powerful mobile phone app for Google Earth as well, which allows you to see things including the overlaid image files, but unfortunately a lot of the associated information is not cached offline, which means that you can potentially run into problems when using this in the field away from mobile phone reception. I think you can't mark waypoints in the field either, so Google Earth is not so great in the field. Google Maps is potentially useful if you have reception. Sometimes, however, when you try and tag a location, you will find that it will append that tag to something that's often many miles away, which is unfortunate. You know, for instance, you end up appending it to a council borough, and you're like, actually I wanted this specific hedge, not a whole council borough. So the upshot of this is that rather than use any of these clever Google apps on mobile phones with their large memory overheads and satellite mapping or whatever base maps you want to superimpose, instead I use one with its own very low overhead, low memory base map that allows you to put in pins but no more. You can't record track logs, for instance, which is a shame. Draw line features in this particular app, but we'll get on to why I'm really not that concerned about that. Fact is, you can still export routes that you've already planned out in Google Earth into maps.me, but there are 3 problems with maps.me compared to Google Earth, and this video is essentially going to be about how to deal with those issues. First is maps.me does not support keeping files within files, so you would need to export individual files. So for this one I would save this place as a KML, put it on my desktop, I would save this place as KML, put this on my desktop, and I would then email all of these to myself and open them in maps.me, rather than sending the whole fourth marine mammals file and opening it in maps.me. It just won't work. Other issue is, unfortunately, polygons, which are these kind of features, which are used to mark areas. These don't display in maps.me, so I need to change these into line features. And a final problem is that maps.me does not recognize Google Earth's pins, these things, and maps.me and Google Earth does not recognize maps.me pins. So there are some workarounds which I'm going to show you now. So I'm going to briefly take you through some processes. So in order to not save nested files, you would go in and save individual folders. This doesn't contain any further folders inside it, so this is fine. Save place as, stick it on your desktop. You have two options: KML, keyhole markup language, or keyhole markup language zipped. The zipped version is completely unreadable and you can't edit it. So you want one that's editable. Just remember L stands for language, which means it's intelligible and you can deal with it. Go to save. Now go to your desktop. I've got two screens, so you can't see everything that I can see at the moment, but I'll drag this over. So this is a KML file. KMZ has a similar symbol here. You go to right click, you go to open with. Now you won't initially have Notepad as an option, so you would go to choose another app, and then you would have a look, probably more apps. You would use this scroll bar, and from these you would select Notepad. Note that Word was also an option in here. Now, although I'm going to use Word, I'm not going to use it directly, because unfortunately in Word you can't save things as a KML, but in Notepad you can. So should open, oh, you know what, it's just because I'm demonstrating something, clicked the wrong thing. Right click, open with Notepad. There we go. So this is in keyhole markup language. So yeah, you'll see you have opening tags contain a word, and then you have a slash and a closing tag, the same word, but with a slash. That's a closing tag. These should be matched, so if you were to copy and paste a piece of code, you would want to make sure that your tags were matched. Apart from this opening tag, which isn't matched, but most tags are matched, or you have problems. Anyway, so there's an awful lot of code in here, lots of style information at the start, followed by things like, this is some text, then some coordinates, latitude and longitude, height above sea level, or at least above the terrain model that they're using. So just press Control and A to copy it, to select it all, Control and C to copy it. Go into Word and paste everything in here, Control V. I'm going to quickly show you how to make this developer tab open and visible. By default it isn't visible, so you would need to go to Options, Customize Ribbon, click, make sure that developer tag is ticked, and that will show on your ribbon as it does here. Go to Developer, go to Macros, go to Convert Polygon to Line and press Run, and you'll see this polygon word disappear eventually. be replaced with line feature, line string, there we go. So Control A to copy it, select it all, Control C to copy. Go back into your notepad, Control V to paste it over the top. There's an asterisk which shows that it needs to be saved, that it's changed. And go to save. Close that down and open it up again from your desktop. A bit of luck, let's have a look. You'll see that it's gone from this closed shape, which is a polygon, to being this different icon, which is a line feature. So this is now being saved on your desktop, and you can email this to yourself and use this how you wish to. I'm going to quickly show you the developer environment. So developer tab, go to Visual Basic. The code that I'm going to give you that did this replacement is this one here, convert polygon to line. So it starts with the word sub and it finishes with the word sub. So you need to get all of that. I'll make this available for you. Control C to copy it. You would come through, you wouldn't have a module in here to start with. The first thing you do is right click on the word normal, insert, press module. You then get your module here, call it what you will. Then paste in your code and it's available for you to use then. So as I say, you go into developer, macros, convert polygon to line and run. So that is how to convert polygons into line features. I'm going to show you about making symbology between pins, different kinds of pins compatible in a moment. So I'll show you maps.me on my phone, which is the icon here. So you'll see I've got all these nice multicoloured different waypoints here. Now these are named by the colours that are used in styling this, just to make it easier for me to work out how to change the code. Go on into edit bookmark and you'll see that there's 16 different colours that you can use. This particular colour apparently is called blue-grey. So I'll cancel that. So whatever your last colour was is going to be your default. The last used colour is going to be the default for your next pin, which means that they'll all be the same colour. Now I wouldn't worry that this one's got a running man on it and this one's got a star. I thought this might cause problems, but actually it didn't at all. They're actually the same pin. It's more about how they are displayed as a consequence of where they are in maps.me. They're still identical pins. Like this one here, the parking sign, is just the same as this one. So I really like this app. This is fairly low resolution mapping, but it's really cool. It's got all these trails on it, and it's even got this contour information. You zoom out a little bit and it will suddenly disappear, unfortunately. So it does depend on your level of scaling. So you wouldn't get any sense of the land's relief at a bigger scale like this, unfortunately. But this is perfectly usable, and when you think you can have on here boundaries of sites and things, you could have a red line boundary for a development, you could have different buffers, you could have your own routes that you'd pre-planned in Google Earth, for instance. You have a basic sat nav which you can use, give you impressions of how to walk a route or drive a route or what have you. Not going to bother with this. I'm going to show you. You have all of these different projects that you can zoom into. These are work ones, so I'm not going to show you those. I'll just show you that. So yeah, all these different projects. If you look at this star at the bottom here, so those are your different waypoints. And then this is useful. You have the option of terrain. By default, it won't show you terrain, so you need to select that to see these contours. You can export these. So you go to export. We'll ask you how. I'll go with email. Just going to send it to myself. And then I'll show you what happens when I open this up at the other end. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how I open up a maps.me exported file. Actually, I have one that I've already downloaded from my email. It's in my downloads. There we go, I'll open this up. Stop it zooming out. So you have all of these labels that refer to different colours, and you cannot see any of these pins at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save place as. It's going to go on my desktop. I'm going to overwrite the existing one. Now let's delete that, so I have no need for it. Go to my desktop, and it's this one. I go to open with Notepad. So what we're looking for is an extended data tag, and just after that it says style, and it starts off with this color style. And go through and select all of that until it says close style here. Delete that. Then I'm going to copy the code from a Word file which I will make available. So you can see it. So it's this code that I want. Now last time I tried to demonstrate this, I accidentally copied all of this code as well. And then when I pasted it in, you couldn't see all of the place marks, and I panicked for a moment and then realised what my mistake was. So Control C to copy it, Control V to paste it. Doesn't matter that it looks a bit skewy, the tags are all in the right place. So save as. Actually, you know what, you don't even need to do save as, you can just go to save and close it and open it again. This time, oops, see that when I zoom in, every one of those symbols that was visible in maps.me is now visible here, albeit not necessarily as a very similar place marker. At least typically they're the same color, Now I've got a deep purple here and I've got a purple here. Teal is a little joke to myself, it's a plane, because a teal is also a bird and it flies. I only had a certain subset of symbols that I could choose from, so I picked that one. Green for crossings, for instance. Yeah, so now all of your pins from maps.me are visible in some sense within Google Earth. Exactly the same process is used to export stuff that you've marked as point features in Google Earth to maps.me, but you would need to use these exact symbols or else you might have problems. But 16 different place mark symbols isn't too limiting, provide more detailed information about what they all are. So I think you've probably got the gist of that now. So I hope that's been useful. Elaborate symbols such as pictures of hikers or P symbols for parking locations are easy to remember, but when you only have colours, it takes a bit of imagination to work out how to memorise colour markers for use in the field. From the available options, the colours you should use should not be too similar. It may be hard to see your screen, and the brighter it is, the more you use your battery. In the diagram here, the coloured circles show the options available on maps.me and the pins I replace them with in Google Earth. Items labelled in brackets such as vantage points, bat detectors and turbines, things that you are more likely to take from the office into the field. The others you tend to take in the field and back to the office. In the office, point features for fence lines and tracks can be turned into line features and re-exported. You can then delete the pins that you use to these features in your phone. You can associate features with physical properties of what they mark. Tracks are marked in brown, like the dirt of a track, and parking places are marked in grey, like tarmac. Red and orange I associate with hazards, e.g. boundaries to cross, or a lack of phone reception. Greens are associated with safety, e.g. gates and good reception. Other things are in emotionally neutral colours, and I can't think of a theme for them. You might wish to use these other colours too, for example, to mark the junction between fence lines. You can't follow both fence lines, but it's nice at least to have a record of where the one you didn't follow started. What Google Maps calls pins, Maps.me calls bookmarks, and Google Earth calls place marks. There are also various words for folders. They're called sets when you use Maps.me. Pins is a nice short word, and meets trying to remember what they're called on each platform. It's difficult enough remembering what things are called, but it's harder keeping track of how data moves between two different apps that don't communicate perfectly. If you apply some strategy and ingenuity, and take advantage of the short sections of code I'll provide, it's not difficult. Maintaining up-to-date information is easier if you separate things that might change in the office from what might change in the field. Office data includes point features. For ornithologists working on wind farms, this may include vantage point locations and actual or potential turbine locations. Also, land ownership boundaries, development footprints and buffers rendered as line features. Exports include mainly health and safety and access information recorded as points. Generally not discussing biological recording here, even though it is the main scope of many of our jobs. Mostly this will be done on survey sheets, though things like bat roost potential, with the possibility of having to find features on a return visit, might benefit from the use of a geolocated photograph rather than a simple pin. Incidental records that are not within the remit of your survey may be outside your usual area of expertise, and you may wish to take photographs for verification. There's a great app called GPS Map Camera, which saves locational information and date and timestamps for such records, and this can be read automatically into a spreadsheet. I plan to make a short presentation on this topic. Some features may work in both directions, such as bat detector locations. depending on if you deployed them or someone else did. Or parking locations. You may have found them from Street View of Google Earth or in the field. Lastly, I'd like to leave you with this schematic, which basically shows how I think about creating a generic folder structure for Google Earth and how this might map onto a simplified structure for maps.me with fewer layers to it. This would really depend on how you are likely to maintain these different kinds of features. So where you have large amounts of purely office-based information like land ownership boundaries, survey areas, buffers, VPs, turbine locations. These are things you're unlikely to need to maintain very often, so you might as well pull them all together into a single file, and it's one that you're unlikely to maintain in the field, but one that you probably will want to keep with you. So I like to have a generic folder structure starting with 000 or whatever at the start, so that when I do an alphabetic search of all the features in Google Earth, it floats to the top. So some features will be optional. For instance, you might not necessarily be very interested in taking out designated areas with you into the field. It might be for a certain site you don't have bat detector locations, for instance, so perhaps you're not going to take this one with you. So I would strongly recommend keeping a folder which is separate to all of these and using it just to add additional points in the field, so that you can export that to yourself and use all the different symbologies to mark out different kinds of features. This saves you writing in the namespace of each of the features that you create. For instance, if you're using red for a fence line, then you know your red pin is going to be a fence line. You don't need to write fence line every 5 yards. So yeah, and then you would take those exported information into Google Earth and you would join it up if you wanted to with a line feature. You could then add it to hazards as a fence line or a boundary and re-export it to yourself. You might consider keeping this kind of information within risk assessment, method statement, folder, safety, health and the environment, whatever you want to call it. Potentially have a link within your method statement for your risk assessment, perhaps a QR code even to show where this information is stored. Certainly once you have strict geographical information, it's much more useful than just having a standard risk assessment with generic risks that people are used to and know already. It's good to have specific information about your site. If you do find any alternative to maps.me which is capable of supporting polygons as well, potentially overlaid images, but will cache things offline, then I'd be very interested to know. I know that QField is an example of such an app. That's an implementation of QGIS. It's very sophisticated indeed. I think it's brilliant, but that's more like the kind of thing that you would set up for mobile mapping. It's a much more involved job, sorting out base maps for a site. I like the fact that maps.me will work you can download like the whole of the north of Scotland or the whole of the south of Scotland, and once you have it, it's on your phone and it's great, it's safe. You're not going to lose it. You don't need to worry about losing phone reception and not being able to use your maps properly. You can always add pins. You can change colors of the pins for different symbolic purposes and export them. Draw line features on the basis of what you have, re-export them. It's challenging to keep a track of all this stuff, but it's definitely worth the effort. I hope this has been a useful talk to you. Please consider subscribing to my channel. It's very nice that people like this in Facebook, but I would be very grateful if you could hit a thumbs up on my YouTube channel if you like this, and potentially share the link with friends, potentially colleagues, and thank you very much for your time.